We are the DFPN. Always question the answers.
No Gimmicks podcast, and we bring it to you. Every time we turn live, man, you know it's the truth. Every after show, moving down, it's the time to move around. No Gimmicks podcast is going down. Every night, every time in the ring, this is the time for No Gimmicks, no, we doing our thing. What's your state of mind, state of mind? Moving down a statement when we take the line. This is exactly wrestling the state design. When you see Stone Cold like me, with the stunner in the world, exactly, man, what we bring. Every night we move like Brock Lesnar, the F5, No Gimmicks. We take you to your limit, what's the feeling? When we live in the air, you know we on, it's the time. Guarantee we move, you know how we respond. The state is mine, the state design when we feel it. Moving down, what's the healing? No Gimmicks is the feeling.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the No Gimmicks podcast here on the DFPN. New year, welcome to 2025. New show, welcome to the new show. Before we get into that, if you read the description, if you paid attention to what we're posting, we have to address an elephant in the room. So normally when we do this show, it's myself and my co-host, the fabulous one, Frankie D. Frank decided to take a hiatus from podcasting. So going forward, the show will be just me. You'll be getting just me, but have no fear. I have decided to reformat the show. It probably would help if I had my mic close up on me. But yeah, my co-host, the fabulous one, Frankie D, he is going to be taking a hiatus. What's none but love, man. It's none but love. Hope you come back to the show. But if not, man, it's been real. Again, none but love. Take your time, do what you got to do. And the door is always open, my brother. You know what I mean? So with that being said, we did format the show a little differently now. Since it is going to be a one-man show for the time being, we will be having some guests on, hopefully some reoccurring guests. We'll have those guys on and talking some stuff. One of my big things that we're going to be doing for the year is diving back into the indies, because it was kind of a passion project for me that I kind of got away from, is interviewing the indie talent and starting at the ground floor, working my way up. If you guys really do follow me on all social media platforms, I don't want to plug myself. I'm so terrible about I'm terrible about that. But if you follow me, I did an interview with the Hardys over at BCP Plus. Shout out to BCP Plus for being so gracious and handing me that opportunity. But I ended up interviewing them, and that kind of reinvigorated my love for, just interviewing and going back to the ground floor, looking at some of these guys that we've had on the show before because they've grown. I want to reconnect to those guys and repump that back in that bloodline, that not bloodline, but that lifeline that we had back into the show. I thought we were on to something there, and the love is still there from the community. Shout out to Metroplex Wrestling, MPX. We did test a couple of things out over the Christmas holiday, and I liked it. So we're going to be going back to that, and on top of everything else that we've done, we'll be sticking strictly into the world of wrestling for a minute, because there's so much happening that I have to talk about it. So we'll talk about it, and that's going to lead me into the show, man. Welcome. We got a good one for you tonight. What I wanted to do, we had two big debuts. We had the debut of AEW on Max, which they haven't come out and said numbers yet. So once they do, we'll break those down too. But we did have another debut. Netflix, WWE Monday Night Raw is now, its home is officially on Netflix. Big debut. A lot of action, a lot of people talking about it. Let's break this down. Let's break down the numbers. Let's get into the show. Welcome to the No Gimmicks. Again, we're going to keep it 100% real, baby, 100% of the time. So with that being said, let's dive in. All right, so we get the Netflix debut. They came out and they dropped the numbers on Thursday, January the 9th. 4.9 million people globally, 2.6 average within the US. Let's break down what these numbers mean. Now, 4.9 million people globally is a great number, especially if you're with WWE. We're not used to seeing these numbers anymore, right? Globally, we're not used to seeing any numbers, but 4.9 million, we're going back to the Attitude Era with these numbers, right? Or so you would think. But if you look at this in the grand scheme of things, what really threw me off is they threw the US numbers. If they would have stuck with 4.9 million globally, I probably wouldn't be looking at this any other way than a success. But this speaks to where we are as wrestling fans. It really does. 4.9 million globally out of 287 million people. That is a discrepancy. That's 1% of the total subscriber rate for Netflix. But again, it's just starting. 4.9 million people is a strong number. Even Netflix said that this is a strong number for them. Do they expect this to increase or decrease? One we'll know next week, right? Because one thing's for sure, two things for certain. It's gonna come on next week. Those numbers have to get reported again. What I would have liked before we dive into where we are as a fan base, what I would have liked personally is them not reporting it. If you look at what AEW's done, and you can make up your own speculation if it was going to be good, if it was going to be bad, if it was going to be indifferent. They haven't reported those numbers, right? They reported the television numbers. The Nielsen rating came out, and it was a little bit higher than where they normally would function, right? So there's an increase on the television side, but the numbers on Max have not really been reported yet. And so if you look at this number, and compare it to what I'm about to say about WWE and what people like Eric Bischoff have come out and said, Nielsen rating should not be applying to the Netflix rating. So you kind of have to get rid of this archaic, ancient kind of format, because if you put into the fact that Nielsen accounted for 2.5 million, 2.5 per people for a household, then those numbers grow exponentially if you try to multiply them with what you're seeing on Netflix. So 2.5 people per household, is that going to account for a subscription? No, it doesn't, because rule number one, right? And this is just how I look at it. Rule number one is you can't count 2.5 people per account. When you can obviously make multiple accounts on a Netflix account, right? So you can, within that one account, you can have about 6 sub accounts, because mom has one, dad has one. If you have 3 kids, they each have one. That's at least 5 accounts. So if anybody's watching Raw on those accounts, should that number really count, or are we going to the overall? These are some of the questions that I have. And Nielsen's not tracking this stuff because they're not tracking the streaming numbers. Who's reporting that? The company. And if you're going to take the company at their word, then you have to take into account that they looked at all these accounts. Who's watching Monday Night Raw on these accounts? And is it trust? Is it a trust system? Right? They're impressed with it, so they reported it. If that's the trust system, all right, these numbers are the numbers. We don't have to refute them. You can bump them up. Again, you can boost them. You cannot, right? But you got to take the company at its word. They reported 4.9 million globally. They have 287 million subscribers. And in that, you have a possibility for, let's multiply that number times 5, right? So 287 million times 5 is a shitload of accounts possible, right? There's no way that all 287 million accounts are just one person. That's ludicrous, because I myself have me, my wife, and my kids. So you have to account for that some way. So if my kid, who doesn't even live here, is watching Monday Night Raw, which he did at his house, right, then does my account track his number? That's the big question. Sorry, this may sound confusing if you're listening. This may sound really confusing, but that just goes to say, what are we actually tracking? And 4.9 million people globally, this is where my concern may lie, right? So the wrestling fan base is very divided in America. And we'll take that US number, 2.6 million, which people have tried to boost it already and say that's at least 6 million. No, it's 2.6 million. The company reported it. You have to go with that. You can't boost it. You can't say anything else other than 2.6 million, right? And then that 2.6 million, that's only maybe double what they did normally for 2024. So they average about 1.2 in 2024. So on this Netflix debut, it only doubled your audience. When in the United States, there's a lot of people with Netflix accounts. Are people just not tuning in? Did they forget that it was going to be on Netflix? Which is it's likely, but it's also highly not likely, because it's impossible to even log on Netflix and not see it. If you have a Netflix account, they've put this thing on the front row. They did a lot of hype for it. I'm probably going to get a lot of shit for this one, but it's fine. But that's what I'm saying. It's like, you did a lot of hype. 2.6 million in America. It doubled your audience. Yes, that's great. But you also doubled that for when The Rock came back. You know what I mean? Like, you had a 2 million viewers when The Rock came back. He was doing this whole thing, building himself up to WrestleMania. And 2.6 million is kind of a low number in the grand scheme of things, but that lets you know where we are as a fan base. The wrestling fan base has shrunk. It has. It just has. And we're further dividing ourselves by this AEW WWE thing. I wrote an article about this a long time ago that I never published because it was too much. But looking at these numbers, the American audience is petty and it's not as big as people think. There is no win in just 2.6 million viewers. When Jake Paul, Mike Tyson globally had 60 million, they made it a spectacle. Right? And that's where it comes from. The NFL did big numbers the week before. They did big numbers, which kudos to them. I'll jump into the production side of WWE on Netflix. It was wonderful. No buffering issues. Stream was crispy the whole time. They did a whole bunch of good things with this production. It was not a bad show. But where the numbers don't indicate, if going into the show, what I would have said about Monday Night Raw is anything less than 5 million people globally, I would have counted that as a failure. I'm leaning away from that now because 4.6 is like, it's there. The numbers are there for you to build on. Definitely. Is it a great number? Not really. But you have something that you can build on. Now, out of that 4.6 million, who's going to go back and tell someone to watch Monday Night Raw? That's the indicator. And that's what I'm saying. Like, next week is going to be really, really big for them. So we're building up to the Royal Rumble. We're getting ready to ramp up to WrestleMania season. You threw a lot at this debut, in which that's another issue. You threw so much at us. Like, you have so many celebrities. What's gonna happen when those celebrities are not there? Right? What's gonna happen when you don't have a Rock? Cena's back, but is he gonna be back every week? Hogan, we're not gonna talk about Hogan. We are not gonna talk about Hogan. Yeah, Undertaker there. The only person really you didn't have there that added so much history to Monday Night Raw was the one you could have replaced him with, Hulk Hogan, right? You could have replaced Stone Cold Steve Austin for Hogan, so it's it's apples to apples, the conversation. But again, these types of things are gonna affect. Am I gonna tune in for the nostalgia? Did I get enough out of this debut for me to want to tune in? And that's really up to the people that watch, because you had 3 hours of television and you have 4 matches and a lot of fluff around it, right? Am I going to tune in? You have PLE level matches, but is that going to be enough for me to tune in next week? Yeah, Punk versus Rollins, a rivalry match in which CM Punk came out victorious. I don't know if I would have did that on that particular show. Why? Because it makes it seem like the feud is over. If I wanted someone to tune in next week, then I need a cliffhanger for the show. There were things that I would have done differently. I would have put some history in there, but also I need to build towards the future. And we had Tribal Combat. We had Roman Reigns. They brought all of their big guns to this show. But it also reminded me of what AEW was like back in the day. They threw all of their big guns into the show. And I remember someone saying this is a marathon. It's not a sprint. Well, we kind of sprinted out the gate Monday night. Now, if there's something in place that they've built on, they can continue forward, they can keep our interest, which that is very much probably the case. They probably ended a lot of stuff so they can build some new stuff. Right? But was this enough for people to want to come back? That is going to be the big question. I keep saying that, but it's the absolute truth. What is going to be the outcome of this week? And that, ladies and gentlemen, is your WWE news. Now, before we get out of here, I'm going to try not to keep you guys long, especially on this first run. But let's get into AEW. We got some things we need to talk about there too. 1 second. All right, AEW. They also kind of sprinted out the gate with theirs. They what they did, I liked for their Max debut. They brought stories. They left me on cliffhangers. They also announced that Kenny Omega was going to be coming back. We had a pay-per-view, World's End, that led us out of that show led us out of as the Max debut. We had people returning that were going to be a part of this show. I think, for all intents and purposes, they are starting already to build towards July in Arlington, Texas. I do think that. But one thing that got announced today has me really concerned of where we are going to be in 2025. It looks like we're going to start losing people in 2025 because what they announced it wasn't really them that announced it. Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful announced that Malachi Black's contract may have been up. And we've seen on Dynamite that Buddy Matthews wrestled Will Ospreay. Will Ospreay won. And then they went to this whole promo about if you need a guy, you don't need Malachi Black leading you guys. You guys can be tag team champions, blah, blah, blah. It looks like we're going to be in that year where they're going to be losing people. Now, we know Malachi Black is really a WWE guy. We know that. But who else in AEW is going to be walking out the door, right? And I talked about this on the earlier podcast. What do we do with the people that are in AEW and they are unhappy? You got to let these guys go. And that's being nice. You can't keep these guys on the roster. And if they're unhappy, if they're not being productive, like this should be the year that contracts get, not, I don't want to say terminated, but you get an amicable end on both sides to contracts. You just have to, because you're building up to All In. You pretty much have an idea, or you should have an idea of what All In is going to look like, who you want to be in those events, and you should start building towards that. Just like WWE is building towards WrestleMania. WrestleMania is in April. They've been building towards it since Survivor Series. You got to start putting these blocks into place and taking people on the ride. It needs to be transparent, and I don't feel like it has been. And that piece of news just let me know, like, it's 2025 is probably going to be a year to where we lose a couple people. Malachi Black's one. We may lose Britt Baker. Who knows? There's a bunch of people that may be on their way out. Ricky Starks, if they come to a conclusion. We already know that Penta's going to make his debut. He didn't make his debut last week due to time constraints on the show, which that is insane. But we know he's there. We know that his tag team partner should be on his way out later this year. Right? So we should be approaching some of these endings, particularly with the people that are unhappy and they haven't been doing anything with. And I hope that continues to be the case. I know Tony doesn't want to be that type of guy, but if there's any year that you need to start doing that, it's this year. You just renewed a TV rights deal. You are building towards something that you haven't done before, which is a stadium show in the United States. You need to start building goodwill with the fans in the United States. The way you do that is give them the best shows possible. And you cut out the outside noise. Doing these moves, it may sting a little bit at first, but it will, in the end, it'll cut out a lot of the outside noise. Because people are fickle. Let's just face it. They're fickle. They'll get over it. They will get over it. But it's going to be interesting. We're going to be in interesting times because both companies are figuring out the streaming thing. Max is building up their library for AEW, which is it's going to be a very interesting year for both companies to see where we are. And I, for one, plan on sticking around and, seeing what the fuss is about. Oh, man. But before we get out of here, I mentioned that we're going to be working with the indies. I am going to be working more closely with Metroplex Wrestling. Shout out to them and all of their wrestlers, and shout out to the brand new MPX champion, Kari Jai Wright. He won it again. I'm going to try to get him back on the show. Let's go over some things that we may have missed along the way because we've been busy. But on the network side of things, and this is going to be your final shots and thoughts, ladies and gentlemen. On the network side of things, we are ramping back up for 2025. The Smoke Pit's coming back. We're going to be recording soon. and those episodes will be dropping again. This episode will be on the No Gimmicks YouTube. So please like and subscribe to @No Gimmicks DFPN on YouTube, youtube.com/@No Gimmicks DFPN. The podcast episodes in audio form will be on YouTube as well. Also on the website. This will be on the website. So tap in, tune in, guys. We got so much coming this year. I am ready to get back to work. I'm ready to get back into shape, if you will, in podcasting shape. So tune in. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for liking. Thank you guys for subscribing. Until next time, you guys be peaceful and enjoy what you want to enjoy. My guy ain't here, so I'm going to have to say it for you. Go get your pet spayed or neutered. It's wintertime. We got a big winter storm. Take care of your dogs. Take care of your cats. Take care of your animals. If you're not, please have your dogs spayed or neutered and get them somewhere where they can be cared for properly. Until next time, guys, peace.
And I know it's all business, all business, all business. We give them no gimmick. Yeah. And I know it's all business, all business, all business. We give them no gimmick. Yeah. And I know it's all business, all business, all business. We give them no gimmicks.